Good morning or good evening, wherever you're watching us from. This is the Daytona Sealed Live. Over the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to close the sealed auctions for three of the most unrepeatable and exquisite examples of the Ferrari Daytona. Up first is the 365 GTB4 Daytona Coupe, followed roughly 15 minutes after by a spectacular Daytona Spider. And to close us off this evening will be one of the most storied Daytona Competiziones. I'm joined by two special guests and two wonderful colleagues from RM Sotheby's. Joining us from Baja, California, in not only the sun but in sunny surroundings, is Brian Finster, who works with Gian Paolo in the US, based in the LA office, and Gian Paolo, who's our newest recruit. He's based in Arizona, but also working with Brian in the Culver City, LA office. Great to have you both, guys.
Thanks for having us, Harvey.
How's your first few weeks been at RM Sotheby's, Gian Paolo?
It's been a lot of fun. I spent a little bit of time in Los Angeles. It's been really fun getting to know the team and learning a lot, experiencing a lot of amazing cars, and just enjoying the ride. I'm excited for the future and everything that's to come with it. So enjoying it a lot so far.
And are you on vacation, Brian?
Not sure what vacation is, Harvey. But yeah, I have left the United States for just a couple of days, a long weekend. But I find it interesting, right? Like, we're sitting here, we have three people all focused on the same thing, which are these three irreplaceable, irrepeatable Daytonas. And you're sitting in the UK. We have Gianpaolo sitting in, Arizona, and then I'm just south of the border of Mexico. But the reason I think that's important is because it kind of speaks to the power of sealed, right? Like, you could have a live auction where you need to be there, or you can be on the phone with somebody to try to take part in that. There's private sales, which still exists, obviously, like globally, but sealed bridges a gap that brings people together from all around the world to all participate at the same time in the same venue, right? Like, there's no cheat code here. It is exactly what it is. It's digital, it's live, it's global. So I think the three of us sitting in such opposite locations right now really speaks volumes to the platform. So I think it's perfect.
Completely. So over the course of the next 30 to 45 minutes, we'd like to take a little bit of a journey. We'd like to have some education in here, perhaps a little bit of education on these three exquisite examples that we're selling. And we're really not just selling a Daytona Coupe, a Daytona Spider, and a Daytona Competizione. We really are selling the best of the best examples. And that's the sort of stuff that Sealed exists for. And we're also going to try and educate you a little bit about Sealed, where that platform's come from, how it works, and a little bit of an explanation of the bidding process. Brian, you've been part of Sealed right from the beginning.
Yeah, I have. It was developed just before my time. There's a gentleman on our team by the name of Jack Little, in collaboration with Shelby Myers, who's our global head of private sales, and him and his family founded RM Sotheby's. They identified a void in the market, right? There was, again, to my point a moment ago, there's private sales, which happen, it's the majority of the market. It's most transactions that happen are just, kind of dealer to person or person to person. There's auction, which really represents, arguably, most of the time, really special cars, right? Things that warrant a story, warrants an engagement in a room. And then there was this gap of, like, how do you represent cars that you should sell quietly, that should go to a discerning audience, and then also that where people want discretion. I think these Daytonas speak to that too, that they're incredibly special, they're incredibly irreplaceable, and also, like, they deserve, like, that the environment where they can sell quietly, that they can achieve the price that they should achieve. They should achieve the price that is kind of passionate for the buyer and for the seller, but it doesn't need to be public. And it was really predicated on, like, back, call it, a couple of decades ago, where if you wanted to buy something, whether it was a business or a house, you would, like, send this lawyer this sealed offer or to a lawyer in, like, New York City or somewhere else. He would then review them, and he would get back to people, and he would say, okay, well, you're still in the running, and now it's time for best and final, and you can come back and tell us what you think it's worth to you, right? And so Seal was born out of that, but it bridged that gap to kind of the digital age and to the more modern age, which is, like, how do you take the, we're not going to send handwritten letters anymore saying, I'd like to buy your Daytona, here's my offer. That would take us months and months. And instead, we now have, like, you can go online, you can place your bid, you can see exactly where you fall, but you can't see the price that someone is, paying above you. Basically, you can say, hey, I'm Brian Finster. I think these cars are worth X. and then my position might be third, it might be first, it might be fifth, and then I have the opportunity to bid as many times as I want to continue to try to get up to where I'm willing to go to try to win this car, to try to take it home. And then when that transaction happens, we don't publicize it. So RM Sotheby's isn't out there saying it's sold and it's sold for this much. The only thing we say is that the auction is closed. We don't say where it's going or how it's going or how it got there. We say it's closed. So then you can take that car home and go into your garage, you can go into your collection quietly, and you can choose to share the information with others if you like, or keep it completely yourself. So, I think Jack and Shelby were the ones who where the brainchild came from. And then we've just taken it and just run with it to the best of our ability, continuing to iterate the platform, to try to make improvements, to try to meet the needs of the enthusiast. And so we take feedback all the time, trying to make it better, faster, stronger, and more effective.
Yeah, I think I share all of our passion for Sealed, and it's been great to see some fantastic results on the platform. And certainly, I think we're engaging buyers and maybe sellers that wouldn't participate in the standard live auction format. We know it's new, and we know that perhaps the bidding process isn't super obvious to everybody. So we've created a little VT which might help run through maybe some new bidders through exactly how the process works.
At RM Sotheby's, we set the standard for rare automobile auctions, and now we've redefined the way you bid. Introducing Sealed, an exclusive online bidding platform designed for collectors who value privacy, strategy, and convenience. Sealed is a revolutionary way to bid from anywhere in the world. Unlike traditional auctions, your sealed bid is confidential. Only you know the amount. The only thing others can see is your position on the leaderboard. You can adjust your bid as often and as many times as you like before the auction ends. And if the top 3 leaders on the leaderboard change position in the final moments, a chance to rebuttal keeps the competition thrilling for an additional 90 seconds longer. RM Sotheby's has built a 40-year legacy of trust in the collector car market. With Sealed, we bring that same integrity to an online experience, secure, competitive, and tailored for serious collectors. Plus, every user's identity remains private, ensuring complete discretion. For sellers using Sealed, since there are no auction deadlines, you can sell your vehicle anytime from anywhere. A bespoke marketing strategy designed to maximize value and collector engagement. And there is no buyer's premium. Your final bid is the price you pay. For buyers, Sealed provides a chance to win your dream car from the comfort of your home. Complete privacy. No one knows who purchased the car or the final price. And a thrilling competitive experience without the pressure of a public auction. The future of collector car auctions is here. Experience Sealed, where you bid on your terms and the car you want is just a click away.
Now, Gian Paolo, I'm very jealous of you, and I'm not jealous of you just for that car-themed shirt that you're wearing. I'm jealous of you because you've been spending time in LA over the last month or so, which means you've been able to spend time with these cars. Yeah. Have you been able to spend some time with the Daytona Coupe? And can you tell those of us that have not been lucky enough to have been in LA and touching and feeling that car quite how special it is?
Yeah, it's a truly special car. I mean, what I really enjoy the most about it is, there's 2 features that I think really draw the most attention to it. Is it's one of the lowest documented mileage Daytonas likely in existence, and that it comes from a 2-owner home. And another cool fact about it is that it's stayed in California its whole life. It's completely original. It's never been repainted. And it's got a cool story by, being imported by Luigi Canetti, which, we can later tie back to, one of the other cars that we're presenting as well. But, it was brought in by Tommy Lee and Luigi Canetti. And, it was one of the, sold to one of the first, let's call it first Ferrari backers, Willett Brown. And he held the car until I believe it was 1995. And then it was acquired in 1995 by Sotheby's to the current collector. And it's been in one of the greatest collections in the US since. And it just really shows low mileage, never been touched. It's eligible for, preservation classes at major concours events like Pebble Beach. And it's kind of a textbook example of a time capsule Ferrari, peak analog V12 GT, kind of before the shift to the mid-engine Ferraris. And yeah, it's truly a special car to be around.
Yeah. Can I ask a question, Harvey? Because something struck me there, right? Is that low, you know, two owners, no repaint, like these types of things that are really important, right? Low mileage, but they're important to us. Obviously, we live in this ecosystem. Clearly, they're important to owners and bidders as well, because when we look at sealed, oftentimes, depending on the car that we have, you see, you know, 5 to 10 people bidding, and maybe some of those bids are competitive. Maybe some people put in like, this is what I think it's worth, and then they just sit there and wait to see if they can win. This car currently has 56 bids, and you have, I think, like 28 registered bidders, and 11 of them are like duking it out right now, right? And like we'll see this a little bit as later as we get closer to the close, but like the type of action on this car right now is incredibly impressive. The visual that you're seeing on the screen right now is a derivative of what you see on the bidder screen, right? So you can kind of see the top 5 people and kind of where their positions are, and as they bid, these cars are going to change places. We're gonna, you know, from behind the scenes or support Johnny, he's going to place this on the screen from time to time, so you can kind of see some of this action, and it might live next to us, especially as the bidding starts to come to a close. But, you know, Gian Paolo or Harvey, please, one of you jump in here. But like the things you mentioned about the low mileage, the you know, low rate of ownership, or how it's never changed hands, the fact that it was in like a really impressive garage for so long, like clearly that's important. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, on why it's so important and how it's driving this value?
Yeah, I think you know, in my experience, people get very excited about selling points for cars, right? If you go on Classic Driver and you have a look at the any dealer's ads for the cars, everybody will always try and make a selling point out of something. Just 5 owners from new, just one repaint, largely original paint. You know, all these things that people, and quite rightly, try and sell cars on its merits. And often with original cars, you know, somebody will boast about an original interior, and you know, for sure, I've sold cars with original interiors before, but actually, is it an interior that I would want to sit on? Is it an interior that I would be proud to own? Or am I making a big deal out of it being original because it makes up for the fact that actually it's a bit worn on the seat bolsters and actually there's a tear here, but it seems a shame to replace it? I think what's special about this car is, whilst it is original, there's nothing tatty about it. There's nothing you'd be ashamed of. If it wasn't the original interior, you still wouldn't retrim it. And for me, that's quite important. And again, people use the word originality quite liberally. You know, people can be, it's very easy for somebody to say, oh, this car is largely very original. I think what's special about this car, and it ties into the two owner thing, it's not that we think it's not been painted. We know it has not been painted. We know the vendor of the car. We know the museum. We know where the car's been. We know them very well. It's not a case of when a car's been through 8 or 9 owners, it's impossible to really know what's happened. And I think that for me is what makes this car so special. And by the way, low mileage. If it was 5,000 miles, you'd say it's low mileage. This is 2,000 miles.
Yeah, yeah, well below kind of that low mileage threshold. And again, you know, since we've been talking, the bid count is now up to 60. We've got 7 people sitting online, just like watching the end. Those 7 people happen to be some of the top 10. So I think exactly what you're describing is driving the value for the people who are bidding, right? So it's not just, to your point, like there's nothing that you'd be ashamed to sit on. Is that what you said there, Harvey?
Yeah, no, but you know, I was looking at, I was looking at photographs earlier of another car that has its original interior, and you know, the owner was getting very enthusiastic about the original interior, but it had splits and cracks and rips, and sure, it's original, but as I say, what's special about this car is it's original, but also beautiful. And the other tiny little detail that I'm particularly fond of on this car is that silver noseband that runs across the pop-up headlights. The early Daytonas, the European cars had a plexiglass front. Like, they didn't have pop-up lights; they had a plexiglass front strip across the front there. And I think I'm right in saying that the early US cars, which, you know, in the US, your regulations meant you couldn't have the plexi. So that little silver strip was a quite a rare feature to the early US cars that made them look a little bit like the European cars, but still had the pop-up headlights. So to me, that's kind of a really cool, unique feature for a US car. Now, obviously, this car, a very early Canetti car, supplied new to one of the first ever USA Ferrari clients, is very proudly an American Daytona. And I think that little feature is, to me, very, very cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Listen, a quick check-in too. You can see the timer down at the bottom. So there's about 45 seconds left. And as you can see, it just jumped back up to 90 seconds, and you see some of those lead changes. So a feature of Seal to avoid like sniping, right? Someone who just sits there to the last second just to get their one little bit in above the person next to them, is anytime there's a change in position of the top 3 bidders in the last minutes of bidding, we extend by 90 seconds. So again, that is to protect the people who are wanting to go further, willing to go further, and to avoid that kind of like that snipe process that existed on some kind of early digital auction platforms. So we've seen now like a handful of lead changes down to the last minute, 90 seconds. We're up to 66 bids. We still have 7 people kind of actively fighting it out for the car, and I think the top 3 clearly all really want it because they're all going kind of hard in the paint to try to bring it home.
Yeah, the other. I mean, I'm going on a bit about the car here, but I do really like it. The other thing that I think is very cool about this car is the Daytona seats. So Daytona seats today, if you go and buy a brand new Ferrari, you can order Daytona seats, and what it is, it's those little strips that are on the seats there. That's become known as a Daytona strip. Why? Because they were first introduced on the Daytona. Now, the majority of Daytonas have single color trim, so they just have black leather. So whilst you have the stripes, you kind of have to look quite closely to see the design. Whereas this car, very unusually and clearly from new, has a two-tone interior. So it has red and black seats, which means that you see those Daytona stripes so much more. So it really is sort of displaying all the Daytona characteristics to the max, which I think makes it pretty spectacular. Gian Paolo,
really cool.
Have you driven the car?
Yes, I have. It's pretty much, it's like the best way to describe it is like it's a time capsule. Like you feel like you're being transported right back to the 70s. I mean, it's in original condition. It feels like as soon as you step inside to it, you feel like you're transported back in time. So like the seats have that soft, subtle leather to them, and it just has like a really amazing feel. And you can everything about the car just takes you back to the 70s. And I think that kind of, shows that it's kind of like the holy grail for preservation, minded collectors, people that want that originality, people that want that provenance, something that's never been restored, that still has that original leather to it, and that's, that feel to the car. So I think it makes it, really, really special.
Yeah.
And Gian Paolo, you started as a Ferrari mechanic, when you were 16?
Yeah, I apprenticed a mechanic here in Arizona when I was about 16 years old, and he taught me how to drive. And actually, one of the first cars in our shop was a Daytona Spider. And I started working, doing the small things as a teenager can be allowed to do, and maybe helping change oil or do things with the interior trim, or just assisting the mechanic, and just got to know him a little bit by little by little.
So you got to work on these cars, and it sounds like the first car you ever worked on happened to be a Daytona. You mentioned a Spider. We have a Spider coming up next in about 12 minutes. There will be a Spider offered as well. And it looks like now we're down to about 30 seconds here as well, guys. Just a quick check-in. So 20 seconds left on the clock, plus or minus, up to 70 bids. We have 9 people logged in and changing positions. It looks like this one might close. We're, again, living true to our DNA here. It will close, right? We're not saying it sold or it didn't sell or for how much. We're just saying it closes. So in a few seconds here, this one might be behind us. Oh, no. And again, someone is not willing to let it go. So I interrupted you though. Gian Paolo, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Harvey.
I think it'd be a good time to remind these two enthusiastic bidders that the first time the car was sold, it was sold via Sotheby's. The second time the car is being sold is via RM Sotheby's. So it would only be polite that if the winning bidder would like to sell the car in the future, it would only be the right and proper thing to make sure it comes back to Sotheby's.
Very British of you to say the proper thing to do. I agree with you. It would be the proper thing to do. I think that's perfect.
Certainly in the case of the first owner, the only reason he sold the car was, of course, because he'd passed away, and that's how special this car is. That it's one of those cars that somebody's going to keep in their collection and until they're no longer here. It's not the sort of car that anybody ever sells in their lifetime. It's one of these things that you pass down to the next generations, which I know is a little bit of a cliche, but in this case, it really is the case. Because you won't be finding a better one. Lots of people buy cars, and a better one comes along, a lower mileage one comes along, a car that's more original or more special comes along, and so perhaps you sell the first Daytona you bought to try and upgrade your collection. This is one of those cars where once you've bought this car, you know there's going to be no upgrading. There's going to be no, okay, I think I'm gonna stop bidding now because I reckon I can find a lower mileage one next week. Or if I wait to Monterey, I'm sure there'll be a load of 1,000-mile Daytonas coming up for sale. That's not the case here, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are thinking about stopping bidding, then I can't promise you that we're going to find you a better or a lower mileage car.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's nothing that really can compare to it. I mean, the low mileage, the two owners, I mean, you basically have one owner for every 1,000 miles. That never happens, especially with a car this age. So
Gian Paolo,
I
that should have
guess,
been the marketing play for this car. 1,000 miles per owner. So does that limit then potentially someone taking it home in the next 8 seconds that like they have 1,000 miles and then they got to call us back, Harvey? Is that how it works?
yeah, after 1,000 miles, it's coming back to Sotheby's.
Right, right. I mean, it's only true. It's only true to form. Well, listen, the first one is now closed. There was a finish line. Again, the car
Congratulations to the
sold or it didn't
GT40.
sell. Yeah, congratulations to the GT40. Really exciting action on this one. Again, this one kind of surpassed where we thought from an activity and an interest standpoint. 72 total bids. We had just countless people watching it. We had countless people kind of listening into us talk about it. So thank you for all who participated in that. And I think we're going to be moving on quickly. So we're even, typically we space these things out by about 15 to 20 minutes per car. Because the last one ran so long, we got about 8 minutes and 40 seconds left on the Spider. But tell us a little bit about the Spider. So Gian Paolo, you obviously have seen it. I think you've driven it. You worked on a Spider as one of your first cars as an apprentice. Tell us a little bit about the car, please.
yeah, absolutely. So this is, I believe, 110 of 121 Spiders or Daytona Spiders ever built by the factory. It's actually one of only 6 finished in Rosso-Dino, and I believe one of 4 ever delivered to the U.S. market. And if you don't know Rosso-Dino, it's kind of like an orangish hue of red, and it's a striking color for the Daytona. It just kind of has that pop to it. Now it's finished in Rosso Chiaro. And I believe this was finished in December of '73, and it's traveled, just under 17,000 miles to this date. And another, really cool fact about this car is that, it's had the same owner for about 40 years. And coming from a significant Ferrari collection in the US, it comes with a visually striking and rare combination. And I think it's just, the next iteration of the Daytona Coupe. It's for a driver that somebody wants to take out, take the top down and enjoy that California weather or wherever it may end up. It just has that extra, level of driving experience that, you can go take it out for a tour and enjoy it. And it really, really comes alive and something really special to be a part of.
Brian, if you were in Miami Vice and you were driving a Daytona Spider, which of the characters do you think you'd be?
Great question. I'm waiting for you to ask me that all day. I think it's because of the shirt, right? Is that what pulled you back in to my
100%.
character in Miami Vice?
I thought maybe
mean,
you're in Mexico on the run.
I might be. If I was, though, I'd probably need this Daytona Spider because I think it'd be a little faster than the Suburban that I've got sitting in the driveway. But I'll tell you, listen, I had this car sitting behind me, behind my desk in Culver City for the better part of a month. And like to say it's striking, I think is an understatement. Like it is beautiful. The lines are beautiful. I think, to your point of like, if you end up with it in a sunny state like California, Arizona, it's perfect for the roads. It'll carve the canyons. It'll cruise PCH. It's absolutely beautiful. And I think we check in on the bidding here too, a little bit lesser than the previous closed car, but 24 active bids right now. The car is doing exceptionally well. Both of these examples so far have kind of outperformed where we thought the market would, from an interest standpoint, from an engagement standpoint specifically, that like people are proving that they really want it, right? That they want to take it home. They want it to be in their garage. So there's a lot of activity. But again, answering your question specifically, I think Don Johnson, I mean, obviously is the one everybody wants to be, right? Beautiful sports coats, great shirts. What's not to love?
Yeah, quite right. I think the other thing about a Daytona, which I think makes the model super, super special, is if you stand in the timeline of Ferrari at the Daytona point and you look backwards and you look at the 365 GTC, the 330 GTC, before that, the 275, the 250 series, you have really classically styled Ferraris of the 60s era. Now, the Daytona was launched in 1969, so technically, I guess it is a 60s car. But it really bridges. It's sort of like a coming of age, or coming into the new era for Ferrari, because it still features a lot of the sort of elegance of some of the earlier cars, but it's starting to have the sort of the brute power and the performance that Ferrari needed to keep up with the competition. Lamborghini had launched the Miura, and suddenly cars were becoming supercars, not sports cars. So I think the reason Daytonas are so special is there aren't that many comparables, certainly not in the Ferrari lineage, of cars that sort of feature both the sort of the classic lines and the elegance of the 60s cars, but also some of that brute power and brute performance that would come later on in the 70s into the 80s and obviously to where we are now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, you know, I mean, because like it's for me when I always saw the Daytona, it was kind of like it felt like like the car made for America. Obviously, it's funny that it was dubbed, you know, the Daytona, which was never an official name from the factory, but you know, it kind of stuck after they had the 1, 2, 3 finish at the 67 24 hours of Le Mans. But for me, this car, or excuse me, 24 hours of Daytona. And it just kind of has that, for me, it has that like American look, like this car was made for like the, you know, the American market. And it's kind of like that Ferrari's answer and like, you know, jump into the future from, you know, different styling, you know, superseding the 275s and all that. And I think it has that, you know, wedge shaped look to kind of draw it into the future for the years to come, you know. So I think it's got a definitely a really appealing look to it.
Well, yeah, and of course the 12 cylindry, Ferrari's latest V12 GT, possibly Ferrari's last naturally aspirated V12 GT, has heavy styling cues from the Daytona. In fact, they'd already used the name Daytona for the SB3, but there's no doubt that Ferrari's latest model is heavily inspired by the styling cues of the Daytona shape.
And I think, I mean, going back to design, you know, this was designed by Pininfarina with Leonardo Fioravanti, and you know, he also penned beautiful cars like the 308 and the 288 GTO. So this like definitely has those style cues from one of the greatest car designers ever. So
yeah, I mean,
it has that to go on.
exactly. It does definitely feel like the beginning of the future for Ferrari's design language. Now, I think we've got about 2 minutes left to go. Just like we had on the coupe, the bidding's close. We've got the 5 front runners there. Looks like there's a 917 in the lead there.
Yeah, I think checking on bidding, we're up to 28 bids. You've got, you know, probably 6 people really kind of duking it out towards the top. I think the interesting thing again about Sealed is that like we had this dark horse where there was someone who was clearly watching the car, they're registered to bid on the car, and their bid was not competitive with some of the other people that were in the process. And what we saw over the last few minutes was this car kind of like inch its way forward, right? So he was testing the waters. It was like if you've seen Jurassic Park, like the original, where the Velociraptors are testing the fence looking for weaknesses. There's a bidder right now who's like, okay, great. Like, let me see what it's worth for me. Let me see where some of these other people are sitting. And so he started incrementally working his way up in the bidding process, and it's put him in a position where he's now competitive. So we've got about 2 minutes left on the bid clock right now. We're sitting at 28 total bids. We have 4 people online actively watching. And you know, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing continues to extend as well. But ultimately, the activity up to this point is still, it surpassed our expectations for it. And I think it's to both of your points, right? Like it is a really special car. I think that wedge shape, the ability to drive it somewhere, the fact that it's been an impressive collection, like it is beautiful. And I, for one, will really miss it sitting behind my desk in Los Angeles going forward. So I'll have to find something interesting to replace it with. I don't know if, you know, if there's a car coming up that can take its spot, but it'll be missed in my background.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head with Sealed. The reality of a live auction is the auctioneer is in control. In our case, Schulte Gilbertson asks you a question, which is effectively the last guy sat over there bid X amount. Therefore, if you want to participate, you have to bid more. Whereas Sealed asks a very different question. Sealed asks you simply, do you like the car? And if you do like the car, would you be interested to bid? And you bid whatever you want to bid. So it's a far more open question. You know, and if your bid isn't the highest bid, that's no problem. There's nobody telling you what to do. It's a very, hopefully it's a very empowering process for the bidder. And if the bidder decides they'd like to increase their bid, they're very welcome to increase the bid. The only constraint they have, of course, is the timer. Speaking of which, we found ourselves back in the 1.5 minutes to go zone. That 1.5 minutes crucial.
We did.
Because that's the auto extend, as Brian explained earlier. if a bid happens right at the death there, in order to make sure that nobody gets gazumped at the very last second, the timer resets itself to that 90 seconds or 1.5 minutes. So you can see on the screen there that red car, not sure what that is, a Bugatti, I think, is trying to catch up the Porsche 917. Here we are, and has overtaken the Porsche 917 with a fresh bid.
And I think the platform is unique in that fact that you're allowed to, essentially with the sealed platform, you're able to put your best foot forward. If you're interested in the car, you're not worried about, being in the auction room and, people know what you're paying for the car, having to compete against one. I mean, it's just more of like a straightforward, you put your best foot forward for what you think you want to acquire the car for. It just allows it to be extremely competitive, as you've seen in the last auction before. In this auction right now, people are kind of jumping in and taking the lead and kind of swapping places and seeing where they rank amongst the other bidders. So it's definitely unique in that sense. But Harvey, I wanted to ask you, what do you think sets this Spider apart from some of the other cars out there? Is it the Rosso Dino original color, or is it the low mileage, or what do you think makes this car a little bit different than some of the other Spiders?
Well, it's another proud American car. It's been in America its whole life, supplied new to the States, and with a fantastic owner for the last 40 years. I don't think if you were going to buy a Daytona Spider, you would find a better interim custodian to have cared and looked after your car in the meantime. That it really couldn't come from better stock. A lot of these Daytonas have, again, I'm talking about interior colors again, but a lot of these Daytonas have black leather interiors. I think with the Rosso coachwork, having that lighter interior, having those contrasting Daytona stripes, makes the car super appealing, makes it, I think, super good looking.
Sure.
Condition is fantastic. The mileage is very low. Look, I mean, we were talking about the other car being 2,000 miles. Now, this car isn't 2,000 miles, it's 16,000 miles. But we probably would be talking about 16,000 miles being incredibly low mileage for a car that's 50 years old if it weren't for the fact that we just sold a 2,000 mile car. Again, 16,000 mile Daytona Spider without doubt will make it amongst the lowest mileage of the 120 Daytona Spiders built. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And much like the Daytona Coupe, we're looking at an original car here. We're not looking at a car that's been restored or a car that's been changed color 5-6 times, full of filler, been restored by maybe great restorers, maybe not so great restorers. We're not talking about a car like that. We're talking about a car that has originality in it. And cars like that have a level of sort of integrity and honesty that you don't get from a car that's been Concours restored to Pebble Beach standards. Now, that's not me saying that those cars are bad cars to own, but these cars are a different proposition. And naturally, as time goes on, the amount of cars that can be represented in this original, untouched, unmolested, honest state is getting fewer and fewer. So, that's why I think this car stands head and shoulders above a lot of other Daytona Spiders.
Yeah, I agree. And you've obviously driven a few of these. Like, how does it compare, do you think, to its its little brother, the Coupe? How does obviously it's a Spider, you can open the top up and let the air in and enjoy it, but how is the feel, how is the handling compared to the Coupe? Is it similar? What are your
I'm from a little country called England, and even in the summer we have quite a lot of rain. So one of the great things about a Daytona Spider is, amongst convertibles of the era, the roof is very easy to put up. So if you've got a Cal Spider or some of the earlier coupes, if it starts raining in England, then suddenly you're going to have to pull over, and it's a two-man job to put the roof up. One of the great things about a Daytona Spider is how usable it is. Now, part of that is the roof. Part of the fact is they have a huge trunk. So, if you were going to go on the Colorado Ground, for example, there's plenty of space in there to have easily enough luggage for yourself and even the most fashion-conscious passenger, full of suitcases and shoes or whatever. The torque of the engine makes them so easy to drive. If you're in fifth gear and you put your foot down, it's not going to bog down and stall. It's just going to pull. Beautiful gearbox, 5-speed. They're just such an easy, wonderful car for cruising in. Equally, when you get on the sort of the twisties and you want to step it up a little bit and use a few more revs, they're a great car. They're very well balanced. People complain that they're heavy, but they're beautifully balanced. So for me, a Daytona Spider is the ultimate car of that era for touring. Now, I spoke earlier about the Miura being the sort of the Lamborghini equivalent. Honestly, I think if you did a 500-mile drive in a day in a Miura, you would get out of the end of it probably quite pleased with yourself and quite exhilarated, but you'd be tired. Your ears would be ringing, your legs would be sore from the heavy clutch. Daytonas just aren't like that. And when you take the roof off, it sort of opens up a whole new dimension of enjoyment. I don't know what it is about having the sort of, whether it's the wind in your hair, whether it's maybe the connection to your surroundings, but when you're driving an open car in great weather on great roads, I do think there is an elevation of the experience by having the ability to put the roof down. So for me, a Daytona Spider is easily worth the multiples that it might be of its coupe little brother, as you say.
Sure. I agree. Something special.
Speaking of multiples, by the way, guys, quick check-in. I think we've doubled the bid count just in the couple of minutes we've been talking. It's up to 46 bids. It's been incredibly competitive. We're now plus or minus 5 minutes past the original close time. With a little less than a minute left in bidding activity here, right? Oh, there we go. All right, so this one also is closed. So it's an exciting end to the second car. So, both cars have, from an interest standpoint and an activity and a bidding standpoint, have far surpassed our expectations. It's interesting with the sealed platform, unlike kind of the live process where, you're in the room, it's happening, your hands up, there is constantly like someone with a gavel telling you it's about to close, and if you like to kind of participate or come back in. This allows people to sit wherever they are. In rainy summers of the UK or the boiling hot summers of Phoenix, like, you can bid actively, you can keep the activity going. This thing would extend in perpetuity if two people wanted to continue to go as far as they could. So we're about 8 minutes and 20 seconds away from the comp closing. I know we've got a short video that's going to be teed up here as well, but I don't know if you guys want to give a little bit of an overview on the comp before we start.
Oh, well, I've been waiting to talk about the racing car all evening. I mean, I love Daytonas and Daytona.
Yeah, I know you
Spiders,
have.
but the competition is. I'm super lucky to have been blessed with the opportunity to drive a Competition Daytona, and it is up there with the most exhilarating cars that I've ever driven. Strangely, it drives like, of course, it drives like a Daytona on steroids. It drives like a Daytona that's been on the most outrageous diet. It's a Daytona that's been on Ozempic for a year, and it's also been on steroids. It's got more power, but it's lighter. It has more responsiveness. Sure, all the comments I just made about how your ears won't be ringing after driving a Daytona for 500 miles. Okay, that's not the case with the Competition. You'll have goosebumps from the second you get in it. Your ears will be ringing from the second you get in it. Your neighbors are going to be furious because you've set their car alarms off. But for me, it's one of the best driving cars I've ever driven.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And just a quick check-in, we've got 16 bids on the comp currently. We have 5 people actively watching the process, meaning that there are bidders that are logged in that are not wanting to let it go. So, like, clearly people share that kind of like desire to piss off their neighbors, or that feeling of exhilaration that they want to go for. And like, anecdotally from our office, anytime we're trying to sell a really special car, typically we'll say, guys, let's go drive it. If it's a driver, right? If it's not a 2,000-mile car or something really low, we'll say, let's get in it. Let's experience it so that we can articulate what it's like to other people who might be in this as well. It is an impressive car. And to your point, it'll either excite you or scare you because it's fast as hell. I think your Ozempic comment is hilarious. Like, it is light, it's mean, it's loud, it's hot, it's everything that you want it to be and expect it to be, and it delivers it in space.
Yeah, and this is a Series 3 car. So they made 15 Competition Daytonas, like just 15. That's way less than they made number of 250 GTOs. Half the number of 250 LMs they made. They just made 15 of these cars. This is Series 3, so it's the ultimate iteration. It's the most powerful. The early cars were all aluminium body, but the Series 3 cars have a number of aluminium panels and actually are no heavier really than the early alloy cars. The reason they changed is because they were stronger and they were better built. Now, this car is one of a handful of Comp Daytonas that raced a number of Le Mans 24 Hours, competed twice in that race, and also competed 3 times at the 24 Hours of Daytona, which of course is where the Daytona gets its name. Not only that, it's one of 4 or 5 cars that were part of the NART team. NART, of course, standing for North American Racing Team. which was the sort of the semi-works Ferrari racing team for the USA. So being a NART car isn't the same as being a Scuderia Filippinetti car or a Curie Francorchamps car. They were privateer teams. So in Europe, the cars that raced at Le Mans were either Pozzi entrants, Pozzi being the French Ferrari dealer and importer, the Curie Francorchamps being the Belgian equivalent, or Scuderia Filippinetti, the Swiss team. They were privateers. Not really was something different. Not really was the works Ferrari of USA, if you like. So the car being part of that lineup and part of that team, I think super special. And when I say it raced at Daytona and Le Mans, now these are 24-hour races. They're seriously grueling events. It didn't just participate in these events. In the case of Daytona, it won its class. So this is a car that's lived a very rich competition life. It's also lived a very successful competition life. And not all of those 15 competition Daytonas can actually claim to have seen an awful lot of competition. Most of them did, to be fair, but there's a couple of cars that only did a handful of things, or a couple of cars that went to long, grueling endurance races like the 24 Hours of Le Mans and perhaps didn't finish, perhaps spun out. So this car can lay claim to not only being one of the ultimate Series 3 cars, only one of 5 cars, but also being a race winner in a 24-hour race, which does set it apart from some of the other cars.
I truly
I feel like we're on a 24-hour race. Sorry to interrupt. Sometimes these live streams we can trip over each other, but just a quick check-in, right? So 24 hours of Le Mans, like it feels like we're on it right now. So we're up to 21 bids. You still have now you have 6 people logged in actively watching it. That's not the entire bidder pool, by the way, for anybody watching this live stream. That's just the people that we know are logged in, watching and actively bidding and not logging back off. So we got about 3.5 minutes left on the bidding process for this car. It's an incredibly special car. I mean, your comment about steroids too, I think doesn't even do it justice because it's so powerful and so much fun to drive. But we're up to 21 bids, a little more than 3 minutes to go. Gian Paolo, I interrupted you, so please keep telling us about this thing because it's an unbelievable piece.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, like winning Daytona, being a part of it, what better name for a car than to be the Daytona or have it dubbed the Daytona? And Harvey, you've got racing experience and a lot of driving experience, especially with this car. Like, what do you think it means to have been driven, or like what sets this kind of car even apart from other, Series 1, 2, or 3 models to be driven by like people like Berlinetta, Andre, Fred Phillips, Danny Sullivan, and Al Unser Jr. Like, those are a lot of big names in the car world.
Al Unser Jr. raced the car when he was 19 years old at Daytona. So it would have been certainly one of his first appearances at Daytona, probably one of his proper professional race car drives. He'd go on obviously to win the Indy 500 on a couple of occasions, I think, as well as a very successful career in IndyCar. I think the other thing that's very cool about these comp Daytonas is partly because they're obviously born from a road car, but these cars were incredibly successful. They took wins at Daytona, they took wins at Le Mans, they took wins right around the world, and they actually raced competitively for a number of years. So when Al Unser Jr. raced his car at 19 in Daytona, that was 1981. So the car was 8 years old, and the car was still competitive, amongst contemporary machinery, the RSR Porsches and other things. But what I think is, and I know I said earlier that they're very noisy and they're going to upset your neighbors, but they are drivable on this road. On the road, this car has been road registered. It is, I believe, road registered now. And yeah, I've driven Daytonas on the track. I've also driven comp Daytonas on the road, and they're actually not difficult cars to drive on the road. Look, sure, it is very noisy. That doesn't mean we can't fit silencers and mufflers today, but they're actually very tractable on the road. They still have the torque of the road cars, so they're very easy to drive, and being lighter, they're easier to sort of throw around. So one of the reasons that I think comp Daytonas are so honestly underrated is because I don't think enough people have driven them on the road to realize what a versatile, Swiss Army knife of a car they really are.
Listen, if you're pissing your neighbor off by the sound of this car, they're going to be more mad if you put a silencer on it, Harvey. At least if I was your neighbor, I would be. It's unbelievable. And a quick check-in, right? So we've got less than a minute to go, 40 seconds to be exact. Change in the leaderboard just bumped us back up to 90 seconds. We're up to 26 bids. I mean, this thing, to your point, whether it's road registered or not, actually, I can't comment on that because I'm not entirely sure if it is today. I believe it is, but I'll tell you, we drove it on the road in Los Angeles, in Culver City, and it performs. Like you can take it out into traffic, though it's not where it's designed or meant to be or wants to be, but it has been driven very fast down Jefferson, La Cienega, and a couple of roads in between, and it scared and excited a couple members of our staff. So it's unbelievable and is really, really road ready.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, think of another car that of certainly of this era that was able to win at Le Mans, but you can also drive down the pub or drive down Jefferson. It's very hard as you get later on in the evolution of the racing car. It's very hard to think of anything that could even remotely be claimed to be dual purpose. So, I think that's a huge thing. These, we know these cars form part of collections. The 15 Comp Daytonas generally reside in the greatest car collections in the world. There's a huge number of 250 GTO owners that, of course, also own Comp Daytonas. That's the nature of the beast. But I do hope the new owner of this car uses and enjoys it. I really hope it doesn't become a garage queen. I hope that it goes on the Colorado Grand, or if it comes to Europe, it goes on the Modena or the Toro Auto, because they are fabulous, fabulous cars, and they're real drivers' cars. By taking the weight out of the car and adding the power, the Daytona transforms from a fabulous GT car into a real focused race car. And as I say, I do hope whoever buys this car, and by the look of the leaderboard, it's the green car in the middle, or I've forgotten exactly which model car was winning. But I do hope that if they are the winner, that they make an effort to use and enjoy the car, because they are truly fabulous.
I mean, yeah, you've got a dual purpose car, essentially. You have what was originally a race car that can be driven on the road now. And what's even cooler about it, is it comes with the Classic A White Book. It's certified in that fact, and you can take it out to, eligible events like the Le Mans Classic, the Tour Auto, Goodwood, Monterey. You can take it and drive it on the track, or you can go show it at a concourse, or you can go grab a coffee. I mean, you have so many applications that you can, use this car for. And I think that was, is something that really sets it apart as well, as just having multiple applications for it and being able to enjoy it anyway. You have no excuses on how to enjoy this car.
Yeah.
And the bidding on this car, by the way, might surpass the Spider. So we're sitting at 35 bids. We've had multiple leads, changes at the end, multiple time clock extensions. So to your point, like somebody wants it. Hopefully someone who wants it wants to drive it and doesn't want to be a garage queen, to your comment, Harvey. What I found interesting, by the way, you said Al Unser Jr. was winning races at 19. Can I just ask, what were you doing at 19, Harvey?
I was selling cars, and I think probably getting my race license.
Yes. Race and helicopter, right? I think you're.
I didn't learn to fly helicopters till I was 31, or 30. So no, I was a late bloomer in that regard. Yeah.
Al Unser would be disappointed you waited so long. And Gian Paolo, you were a Ferrari mechanic at 16. At 19, were you already through that apprenticeship and kind of moving on into the career? What were you driving at 19, if you recall?
Oh, I was driving a Fiat Abarth at the time. So yeah, that's what I was driving at the time. I tried to bring the European side of me to the States. It's a small car, but I mean, that was just something fun to have those Italian roots. But yeah, I was still working at the shop, and I worked there until I was about 20, and then I started getting into my my schooling, and I was still in school at the time, but started getting more into the financial side of things. But yeah, was still at the shop, still working at these cars or with the cars, and enjoying them all the way. But yeah, I wish I was racing. I wish I was racing at Daytona at 19. I wish I had that pleasure.
Yeah, I think Harvey might fight you for that dream. But to your point, though, like it is such a special piece. It's so kind of like heritage, ties to the roots, right? Like it isn't just like raw and what it is. And there's 41 bids, so you've got 41 people, I guess, or a handful of people 41 times really want to take this thing home. Again, multiple lead extensions, 45 seconds to go right now, unless there's an additional extension. But it is a really special and powerful car, and it's also been in great ownership up to this point.
Yeah, it's another car that comes from an incredible stable. This car, the vendor of this car, again, if you could write on a piece of paper, if you were going to buy a car, who would you want to buy it from? The vendor of the previous lot and the vendor of this lot would be on my list of paper that I want to be buying cars from. It comes from a fabulous collection, a great home, and an owner that's owned this car for at least 20 years, I think. Which again is testament to what a great car it is. People don't own cars for 20 years unless they're fantastic cars, unless they're things that they hold very dear to them, and things that they've thoroughly enjoyed owning. You know, it's a great.
Look
Oh,
at
there we
this. And it's hit the finish line, by the way. I know. There we go. Um, Again, multiple lead extensions on this car as well. 41 active bids through the end of this process. An incredible, I think, just like activation or activity result was amazing across all three cars. And I know that in a moment we're going to play a video on the comp, which I think that anybody who's watching this right now should stick around for. It's a really special video. I think you'll find it really enjoyable. But like Harvey, Gian Paolo, I really appreciate you guys kind of joining and doing this. For me, it's educational, right? So like you look at these things, these cars, these like really special pieces that kind of come through our hands and go to new owners. I think it's really interesting that we get to spend time talking about them and learning about them in the process too. And for bidders, hopefully, as you're sitting there and like listening to us have this conversation, if you learn something new, or if it just gave you an idea or a thought that our job was successful today. So we're going to play the video in a moment. But Gian Paolo or Harvey, any final thoughts?
Well, of course, I'd like to thank the people responsible for, I've lost count, but I think 200 bids or 250 bids over the course of these three lots. Of course, thank you to those guys and girls that have participated and joined us, both watching us, both bidding. If there's some feedback, we would love to hear it. We're very passionate about our sealed platform, and I'm sure, like everything, there's a way to improve it, and we would love to do that. So it'd be great to hear your feedback. Gian Paolo?
Yeah, and again, thanks everybody for all the participation. It's been fun to jump on with the guys here and talk about the history of the cars. It's something that we're all very passionate about. So it's kind of like we're just having a conversation with friends and just discussing the history of the cars and kind of watching the bidding tick up on the screen. And it's a really, really interesting platform that we think has a lot of potential to keep growing. And it's a super interesting way to buy cars. So we're excited for our next drop coming in the end of July here, mid of July. And yeah, we're just excited to see this keep going. And congrats to everybody that participated today.
Yeah, before we close out with that video on the Daytonas, we should just briefly introduce the 7 cars we've got coming in our July drop. So in a lot order, first we have a 1995 Gunther Werks Speedster. Now Gunther Werks, based out of LA, are resto modders of a very high regard. They just made 25 of this Speedsters. This example, supplied new to Hong Kong, is delivery mileage. It's actually never been driven or registered. It's right-hand drive, as it was built for Hong Kong. We're currently talking to Gunther to see if they can convert that car to left-hand drive. But given its age, there would be no restriction or tariff implication on bringing the car to the US. So that's a fabulous piece. Another super special car we've got coming is the 2012 Bertone Nuccio concept car, based on a Ferrari 430. This was a legendary one-off concept by the legendary studio Bertone Design. It was proudly displayed at the Geneva Motor Show, and it's offered from just single ownership since the motor show. Then following up that is the most famous of all resto models, the Singer. This is not a Singer Classic or a Singer DLS. This is a Singer Turbo. So the Singer Turbos, they've only delivered a handful of Singer Turbos. They're very much still in production. Now this car, the East Hampton Commission, is a fantastic build. It's a very, very high specification, wonderful purple paintwork there. It's just on a handful of miles, less than 500 miles from new, and that's offered out of our LA, not out of our LA office. It's actually offered out of Singer HQ's base in LA. Singer supporting us very much with that transaction, and of course, warranty and Singer service will be fully transferable to the new owner. Following that is a Dino, not any Dino. This is an L Series Dino. So 246 GT Dinos were built in 3 series: the L Series, the M Series, and the E Series. Now, the L Series are often regarded as the most popular and the most beautiful because they retain the wheel spinners that were featured on the 206 Dino. So the other nice feature of some L Series, which luckily this car has, is a cloth interior, which is a really attractive, very cool interior layout. So that's the L Series Dino. Then following that, we have a 964 Turbo. It's sort of the grandfather, if you like, of the Singer Turbo, and this car presented in amethyst purple over a purple interior very much looks like the inspiration for the East Hampton Commission. So I guess if somebody wants to buy the pair, they'd make a perfect pair. Now, the last lot in July's seal drop isn't a car, it's a helmet, but it's not any old helmet. It's a helmet worn by perhaps everybody's favorite racing driver, none other than Ayrton Senna. The Brazilian legend wore this helmet in 1991, and this helmet was featured at the Japanese Grand Prix in 1991, which was the weekend where Senna clinched his final World Championship title, driving for McLaren. Now, that helmet for me is super special. It's something that I think everybody would like to have in their office. That's the July drop. Our drops, much like we've had today, are a curated offering, special things that we think are irreplaceable and things that we think fit well with our sealed platform. That's on July the 17th. Before then, we've got another auction at Cliveden House here in the UK. And then following July the 17th, we get into August, and we all know what happens in August, and that's the Monterey Car Week. So thanks for joining us this evening. Thank you, Gian Paolo. Thank you, Brian. We look forward to looking to some more engagement in our sealed auctions, perhaps some inquiries via private sales, and if not, some bids at our live auctions. Thanks again for joining us. This has been Sealed Daytona, and we're going to see you out with a beautiful video about the Daytonas we've run through the platform tonight. Thank you.
My name is Andrew Olson, and I'm a car specialist at RM Sotheby's. Today, we're going to be talking about the Ferrari 365 GTB4, also known as the Daytona. The Ferrari Daytona is important because it's the last two-seat GT front-engine V12 car for the Ferrari lineup. After the Daytona, the company drastically shifted and came out with the 365 Boxer, which was mid-engine. So this is it's the end of the era, the last front-engine V12 Ferrari. You know, in the early 1960s, mid-engine cars started taking over winning races, and Ferrari changed from the 250 GTO, which was a front-engine car, to the 250 LM, which was mid-engine. But Ferrari, at the time, they still believed that a road car should be front-engine. They were looking into the future and decide what would come next, and what was that next era of Ferrari going to look like. And they replaced the Ferrari 275 with the 365 GTB4, also known as the Daytona. So what makes the Daytona special is that it's a snapshot in time. It was the best of that period, and it's actually still surprisingly fast and amazing to drive today. You know, it'll do 180 miles an hour. They look great, sound great. The performance is far above what most people would expect for the period. We're very excited to offer all three different versions of the Ferrari Daytona: a super rare competition car, a coupe, and a factory Spider. Of the 1,400 Ferrari Daytonas built, only 15 cars were factory-built competition race cars. This is one of those 15. This example was built for Luigi Canetti's North American racing team, known as NART. It raced at Le Mans in 1974. It also raced 3 times at the 24 Hours of Daytona, even winning the GT class in 1975. The GT category is for cars which are based off of the street production versions, but Ferrari made as many changes as possible to make these competitive on the track. Some of these changes, as you see, are the much wider fender flares, super wide tires, a roll cage, some aero work, this here and the front air dam, racing specification headlights, but most of all, it was the engine that was highly modified and really pumped up for racing. For the competition version of the Daytona, Ferrari built a special V12 that put out about 450 horsepower. This is about 100 more horsepower than the production car, which was about 350. This car has basically everything that you could want in a Ferrari Daytona. Amazing looks, amazing performance, period racing history in international events, and you can use it on the street. This Ferrari Daytona Spider is coming out of 40 years of single ownership. It's one of only 121 original Daytona Spiders produced. Although you see many Spiders today, a large amount of them, probably even more than the original Spiders, started out as coupes and were cut or converted into Spiders. Ferrari actually put a lot of effort into building the original Spiders and making sure that they were stronger and stiffer than the coupes because you lost the rigidity of having a top. Let's take a look at some of the differences that set apart an original Daytona Spider from the cut cars and the coupes. So this pillar in the footwell on an original Daytona Spider, it goes all the way out to the edge of this frame rail here, and on a coupe, it'll end at about here. Since the Spider doesn't have a frame for the window, the trim along the top of the door wraps around the corner to give a little bit more structure for the window when it's up. So a Daytona Coupe has a flat parcel shelf on the back for luggage, And on the Spider, this rear floor pan is sloped and a little different behind the seat. An original Spider also has these pull-down sun visors with a little suction cup to keep it in place. Then in the engine bay, a coupe will have fiberglass inner fender wells, while on a Spider there's steel. Also, this beam here is a lot wider on a Spider to add more rigidity to the frame. All these different changes make the car stronger and stiffer and add to a more pleasurable driving experience. The original owner of this Daytona Coupe was actually Ferrari's first ever client in the United States. He bought a 166 Barchetta brand new, which was the first Ferrari here. Later in his life, he bought this Daytona Coupe and owned it until he passed away in the mid-1990s. In the mid-90s, the current owner bought this car from his estate, and today it remains incredibly original with just 2,000 original miles. The interior remains spectacular. All of the leather and dash are extremely well preserved, and let's take a look inside. So all Daytonas had this seat insert with this pattern and the vents in it. These seats became known as Daytona seats. They were later found on the Ferrari 288 GTO, and you can still order your Ferrari today with Daytona seats. The dashboard material it's known as mouse hair, which isn't actually mouse hair, of course. It's a fabric with a fine kind of fuzziness to it. It reduces glare from the windshield. Over time, that texture is lost and faded just from use and sunlight, but on this car, it remains in incredible original condition. You know, as a collector car, the Ferrari Daytonas today are, as long as they've been well cared for and serviced properly, they're surprisingly reliable. It's a car you just don't really want to stop driving. It's an addicting combination of the sound, performance, styling. You know, as a car specialist at RM, I'm very lucky to drive all sorts of different cars, and there are a lot of old cars might look really exciting, and you have these high expectations in your mind for how they're going to drive and how the experience is going to be. Old cars sometimes just don't live up to those expectations. Sometimes the styling of the car is ahead of what the performance was, and it still drives like a 60-year-old car. Where a Daytona it's one of those vintage cars that is exciting. It meets those expectations or even exceeds them, and it's quick even by today's standards. All three Ferrari Daytonas that we have here today are really interesting quality examples that are coming from great homes, and we'll look forward to helping place them with their next caretakers.
What's my name off the list? This is without rhyme or reason.